It only takes one yes. My name is Jen Hampson, and I am a career development coach and program manager. I've worked with well over 1,000 students.
What are some effective ways for students to explore different career options when they're in their first year of university?
Talk to people. So talk to your peers, your instructors, anyone on campus, right, to explore and learn more about different career options. What I hear from students all the time is like, I don't want to be judged. I'm not ready. I don't feel professional enough. I don't have the right questions, right? But the truth is that everyone is in that same boat. No one's ready. All experience is good experience. So whether that's volunteer, whether that's paid, whether that's a personal project like starting your own podcast, these are all things that you can put on your resume and you can leverage that skill set in the workforce later. But at the end of the day, we can do 20 interviews, 40 interviews, 3 interviews. It only takes one yes.
Hi, Jennifer. Welcome to the show and thank you for joining. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And why don't we start by telling us about yourself, your background, and what you do right now?
Absolutely. So my name is Jen Hampson, and I am a career development coach and program manager. My background is in recruitment and HR across multiple industries, but I've really focused on coaching within the post-secondary and student space for the last 5 years.
What inspired you to pursue a career in career development and coaching?
It's funny because when I was in university, I saw a career coach who really, really helped me. And that sort of always stuck with me. And what I kept coming back to through my various roles in HR and in talent development was helping people to reach their career goals. And so that's why I decided to pursue coaching full time. And that's why I've stayed in it. It's super rewarding to see people get the job that they want or to find something that they really love. And that's what keeps me doing it.
I think we met a few years ago, and I remember you used to be a career coach at Haskin, and I don't think I ever took any sessions from you, but I've heard really, really good things about how an amazing coach you were to all these other students that I interacted with.
Well, thank you. It's always nice to hear. I have been very fortunate to be able to coach at multiple schools. And at this point, I've worked with well over 1,000 students over the last few years. So I love to stay in touch with all of my students. And even though we didn't actually meet for coaching, it's great to stay connected and to see the work that you're doing.
For sure, thank you. And so I have been getting a lot of messages on LinkedIn from first year students about career planning. And as you mentioned, you have worked with more than 1,000 students as well. So what are some effective ways for students to explore different career options when they're in their first year of university?
That's a great question because, especially with first year, you're coming into a completely new environment and it can be really overwhelming just trying to transition into university in general, right? My number one piece of advice for students who are in their first year is just to talk to people, right? So talk to your peers, talk to, family, friends, your instructors, anyone on campus, right, to explore and learn more about different career options. Often what's presented in first year is pretty limited, right? Because we're restricted to taking specific courses, all of our intro classes, and trying to go outside of that and meeting people in different faculties, different departments, and exploring just as best you can and talking to people about all different types of careers is the best way to learn about what's out there.
So, what advice would you give to a student who has really limited work experience, but they want to get out there and start exploring different career options? I know you mentioned to talk to people, but besides talking to people, what are some other ways students can start exploring their career journey?
A great way to help build some of that experience, because we all start at the same place with nothing, right? And so a great way to build that experience is through participating in things on campus, things like pitch competitions or case competitions, right? Different events that are taking place already within your school, but also to look at where are there maybe volunteer opportunities, both on campus and off, right? All experience is good experience. So whether that's volunteer, whether that's paid, whether that's a personal project like starting your own podcast, these are all things that you can put on your resume and you can leverage that skill set in the workforce later.
But then, whenever I tell students the same advice, the one question that they have is, what if this doesn't work out? They're scared to take that first step. They're scared to take that action. So, what advice would you give to students like those that are in the same boat as, you know, it's scary to go out there and start doing all these different things?
Yeah, absolutely. It is scary. Like I said, especially as a first year student, there is a lot going on. And, my advice to students over the years has always remained the same. Like nothing is forever, right? The best way that we can learn is to go out and actually do things. So, if it's scary, if it's intimidating, start small, right? Start with a 3-hour event on campus as opposed to jumping into a full commitment of 4 months, right? Start small, even if it's attending an event and going for 20 minutes and saying, that's enough for me, right? Starting to build up that resilience. What I hear from students all the time is like, I don't want to be judged, right? I'm not ready. I don't feel professional enough. I don't have the right questions, right? But the truth is that everyone is in that same boat. No one's ready. We're all coming at this from, we're all transitioning out of high school. Everyone is in this sort of state of trying to figure out what they want to do and trying to determine their career path. So start small and just try to be consistent with it, right? That's going to matter more than jumping head into a big project or a big event or something right away.
Mhm. I love that. Start small and then eventually it'll lead up to something big. And that's what has happened with me as well, because when I first came to Canada 3 years ago, I was really scared to take actions, but I took small steps towards my goals, and eventually those small steps became into big actions. And if I hadn't taken those small steps, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now. So it's really important to take those small steps, even though you're scared. Maybe let's say if you go to a networking event, you can meet just one person at that networking event, even though it's scary to talk to all these people at that event. So I really resonate with that advice, so thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't need to go and talk to 50 people, right? But if we can have one conversation and do that over and over again, it's going to help to build that confidence so that then by the time you go to the 10th thing or you're talking to the 10th person, it's not so scary,
Yeah.
right?
And what mistakes have you seen students make during the university journey? So from first year till fourth year, you have worked with so many different students. So what mistakes have you seen students make during their whole university journey?
Two things that really stand out to me. One, the first thing being letting other people dictate for them, right? So I hear it a lot, right? My parents want me to be an accountant or to be an engineer, and we follow that path. Or, all of my friends are becoming consultants, so I'm going to follow that and apply to be a consultant as well, right? Career development is incredibly personal, right? What we do in our careers is very closely tied to who we are, how we represent ourselves, and it becomes a big part of our identity. Keeping true to yourself and remembering what you like and what your strengths are and deciding what's best for you, it takes maturity to do that, but ultimately that's going to yield you with higher satisfaction later on, right? So trying to drown out that noise of hearing, oh, well, everyone else is doing this, And staying focused on yourself and your path is the first thing. The second thing would be not getting uh, too narrowed in too early. Right? This is a challenge within universities, especially because recruitment has started happening earlier and earlier by large companies and major employers. And so they're now approaching students as early as second year or even first year in some cases. And it's really easy to get honed in on, oh, these are my three options, and so I'm going to pick one of these. And then we sort of follow that for the second, third, and fourth year, right? And so that's why I say in first year, especially, getting out there, even outside of your program, outside of your faculty, and learning about these different areas, doing all of that research and that exploration in first year will help to eliminate that. Because I see so many students who say, oh, I'm either going to become this or this. Those are my two options. And I guess that's it. And then once they've been working for a few years, they realize that there's a whole other world out there. So just really focusing on going beyond your program or even beyond your concentration, and trying to explore outside of that as well.
I totally agree with you on that because when I started off, I was in finance. So in my first 2 years, I was in finance. Then I switched to business analytics. Then I switched to finance again, and then now I'm in general business. And the reason I kept on switching was because I in the last 3 years since I came to Canada, I explored so many different opportunities, and I made sure that I was not narrowing down on one particular thing early because I wanted to test out and explore all these different opportunities that are out there. And as of right now, my friends and the people that I have been coaching and mentoring as well have been reaching out to me saying that, okay, I'm in finance, but I'm not too sure about it. And I tell them, take that one step and figure out and try something new. Go out of your comfort zone, maybe try a job in marketing instead of finance and see if you like it or not, right? And I
Yeah,
think exploring those different options is such a good way to figuring out what you want to do in the future, because if you're too narrow early on, you're not testing out all these different things and opportunities that are out there. And sometimes,
right.
like, if you go into that workforce, you understand that there are more opportunities beyond what the university is offering as well. And a lot of students don't have that mindset, and they get narrowed down into one specific major as early as possible and then stick with that. And later on then they realize, oh, there are other things that are out there that I could have done.
Exactly. University is the only time where you can do sort of these things for short periods and experiment, right? Whether that's through clubs or through internships or co-op, or through volunteering even, right? And so I encourage students to diversify as much as they can during those 4, 5, 6 years that they take in university, because once we're actually out into the workforce, it's really hard to jump around and to try all of those different things, right? So taking advantage of that, I know it feels really messy sometimes, but doing is the best way to know 100% whether you like something or you dislike it, right? And second to doing is talking to people who do those things. So that's why I encourage all of the conversations. But definitely taking advantage of everything, whether it's in your sort of realm or in your program or not, right?
And you keep mentioning talking to other people, right? So whenever someone says talking to other people or networking, they think that, like, students, especially students, and they start thinking that, okay, if I'm talking to someone else, I'm talking to them because they're going to provide value to me, in terms of maybe they'll offer me a job, maybe they'll give me a referral, or they start expecting something in return from them. So
Mm-hmm.
can you explain, what do you mean exactly by talking to people, and what and your perspective on what networking is and what students get wrong about networking and talking to all these different people?
And I specifically say talking to people and not networking because I think networking has the connotation of I'm asking for a job,
Yeah.
right? But really, what networking is at its core is relationship building and learning, right? So, especially when we're thinking about like first year and second year, when we're earlier on in those programs, focusing on speaking to people that you want to learn about their job, their journey, right? Maybe someone has come from the same country that you did, right? And transitioned to being in Canada or being in Calgary, or someone has like a really cool job title and you're thinking, oh, I want to know what it's like to work in AI, right? That seems like a really cool space for me. So I encourage students when we're thinking about networking and doing these sort of informational interviews, we're not asking for anything right away. What we're asking for is insights and knowledge and advice, right? So you shouldn't be reaching out to people unless you have a genuine interest and you genuinely want to learn from them, because those conversations are going to be the most impactful for both sides, right? If you have a genuine interest, that's going to come across to the person that you're speaking to as well, and it's going to form a stronger connection that you might be able to leverage later on. But there is a bit of a reframe that needs to happen between saying, okay, I'm going to set up these conversations in hopes of getting a job. That's not going to get you very far. But if you say, I'm going to set up these conversations because I want to learn about all of these different areas and I want to hear their stories, that's going to get you a lot further. It takes a little bit more, right? Like it takes a little bit more effort and involvement, but that is how you're going to build those connections and really learn from people who could be potentially helpful in your job search later, but also potential mentors or people that you can utilize for things within the academic world, right? If you're working on a project, if you want feedback on a personal project, right? Things like that.
Hmm. And yeah, I love that you said that networking is all about building relationships with people, because that's so true. And if you switch that mindset and your perspective to thinking that I'm going to start building a relationship with them and go into having that conversation with genuine curiosity and interest in what the other person is doing and their life, I think that that's what sets apart a lot of students, and that's how you can stand out as well.
Absolutely. I see a lot of students who go through the motions. They're very good at setting up conversations, reaching out to people in industry or alumni and setting up conversations. But they're doing it because they're told, not because they genuinely want to. And as a result, like we can feel that in the conversation, and people aren't inclined to help you if there is no genuine interest there, right? So, focus on quality over quantity. If we don't need to again have 50 conversations to find people who will be helpful to us, but focus on what do I really want to learn from this person, right? And use that as the guide.
And one more question that I get from students is that I'm still a student. I'm in my first year, second year, third year, and I reach out to someone on LinkedIn saying that, oh, I really love what you're doing and I would love to grab a coffee chat with you to learn more about what you're doing. What is their incentive to reach back to me, even though I'm like genuinely interested? What is their incentive in replying back to me? And that holds a lot of students back in taking that first step. So in your perspective, what is that other person's incentive in reaching out to the students and making sure that the students don't feel as if no one's going to start reaching out to them?
Right. It's a very common concern that I have seen a lot, absolutely, over the years. And there are a couple of things that I remind all of my students, right? The first thing being when you reach out to people, whether that's on LinkedIn or email, or you get an introduction to someone, no one's forcing them to say yes to you, right? They are choosing that on their own volition. So you don't need to feel guilty about the fact that, oh, I don't have anything to offer. I don't have anything to bring them, right? Because they have the option to say no. And not everyone will say yes, but keeping that in mind that they're choosing to say yes to you, right? The second thing is that people love to talk about themselves. Ultimately, as humans, it is in our human nature to enjoy talking about ourselves and to enjoy giving advice because it makes us feel important. So, while a lot of students will think, oh, I don't have anything to offer, you're giving them a platform, right? And you're helping them to feel important and to feel like a thought leader in this space, right? And that's also important for them to be able to share their knowledge and to share their insights. So that's why I say when we're talking about networking or informational interviews, the default is always thoughts, insights, and advice, right? After, a certain number of conversations or a quick Google or a quick YouTube video, you know what an investment banker does, right? But you don't know how this investment banker thinks,
Mm.
right? Or what their advice would be to their younger selves or to someone trying to get into the industry. So focusing on those more personal questions, right, and allowing them to share their experience is going to help build again a stronger relationship, and it's going to help you get more out of it.
Hmm. And there are so many resources that are out there. There are so many advices out there in terms of how to network with people, how to talk to people, how to create a resume, how to go about finding a job, finding an internship, or finding a full-time job. There's so many resources and so much advice out there. And so, and I know that universities and post-secondary institutions, they have their own career services departments. So
Mhm.
what advice would you give to students in making the most out of the resources that universities or post-secondary institutions are providing them?
Yeah. Every university is different in terms of what they offer and what they're able to provide. It's a great starting point, regardless of what the options are, because they are specifically knowledgeable about, current students and recent graduate sort of opportunities and what you're going to need to be successful. So I always recommend taking advantage of career services, whether that is one-on-one advising, events, workshops, things like that, because it is already built into the institution and it's there for you, right? If there are specific things that people are looking for, so with regards to like a specific industry, right, or learning more about a particular type of internship, you know, using career services, also using your instructors. Instructors are incredibly undervalued in terms of career development. They have often major connections in industry, and again, they're there because they want to help, right? They want to provide this knowledge to the students. So tapping into other people in the school who are not just within career services for recommendations, additional resources, and places that you can look, because it can be really overwhelming. There's a lot of information out there. You can find 50 million resume templates with your first Google search. So I do recommend starting with your specific school, and then from there looking at recommendations based on what your needs are.
Hmm. that, that I totally agree with you. And one more question that I have for you is, are there any students that out of all the 1,000 students that you have coached that stand out, and and why do they stand out to you?
I mean, it's like picking a favorite child. There are many students who stand out to me. Um, I think the I've had the pleasure of coaching so many wonderful students across so many different areas over the years. There are some students who stand out to me in terms of the transition that they've been able to make or the growth that they've had in the time that we've worked together. So, for example, there was a student that I worked with last year who came to the first appointment and said, well, I don't really see what career services can do for me. Right? He said, I know how to get a job, and I know how to network, and that's that, right? And that sort of took me aback. And over the course of time, we developed a relationship, and he started to sort of garner some insights as we worked through some of these different areas of exploring different careers, working on a networking strategy, building out his resume, things like that. And at the end of the year, I looked back and we had spent 52 sessions together in the course of a year. And he was able to apply for one job. He interviewed for it. He received the offer. He accepted it. So we spent a lot of time together, and he was able to have such a targeted approach at the end with such high confidence, that always stands out to me because he was so skeptical at the beginning. And it just ended up being a really transformative sort of relationship over the course of the year. And of course, there are always students who stand out for just how engaged they are and the time and effort that they're willing to put into their career development, because it's a lot on top of going to school. As you know, a lot of students are working at the same time, and career takes time and it takes effort, and you have to be consistent with it. So there's many students who stand out for their dedication to it and the success that they've seen. But I think taking some of those students who maybe aren't so engaged at the beginning and seeing their success later on, those are really, really special.
Wow, that's such a wonderful story, and that speaks to how wonderful you are as a coach as well. Because going from that mindset, that what is career center going to do for me, to having 52 sessions in an year is such an amazing thing. So I have a question for you now, in terms of what's your strategy in building relationships with all of these different students and making sure that you're helping them out.
Well, in terms of coaching, even though a lot of the problems or the challenges are the same for so many students, right? Whether that's lacking confidence or just not knowing where to look, or what the sort of standards are, right? It's our first time going through a lot of this. I really do try to approach each student as a completely unique person, right? So my approach will differ for every single person that I coach, because the goals are different, the experience is different, and really keeping that in mind and letting them lead with where they want to go. I'm not here to tell anyone what to do, right? I'm not here to say, oh, you'd be a great consultant, you should go that path, right? But supporting them and providing them with that, whatever it is that they need to reach their goals. I think that just keeping it unique to everyone has helped me to build a lot of trust with my students, right?
Mhm. And when a student is going through their job search journey, let's say if they are networking for the first time, they reach out to someone on LinkedIn, they might get rejections, maybe people saying, no, I don't want to talk to you, or no one replying back to them, or they apply to their first internship with their limited work experience, they get rejected, they get an interview, they get rejected. What advice would you give to students to cope with this uncertainty and this and all of these rejections they might face while they are in this process of figuring out what they want to do and figuring out how to find a job? So what advice would you give to students who are in that stage?
It only takes one yes. The job search, as I said, it's long, it's tedious, and it does require a lot of resiliency. Even when I'm searching for a job, I get rejections too, right? Um, Setting those expectations early on of like, we're probably not going to get an interview for the first thing that we apply for. We're probably not going to get an offer for the first thing that we apply for, right? But going through that process and building that resilience and that confidence, it does take time. But at the end of the day, we can do 20 interviews, 40 interviews, 3 interviews. It only takes one yes. And when we get that yes, you forget all about all of the applications you had to go through,
Mhm.
right? So it will take time. It does require patience, but it's not that you're doing anything wrong. You can do all of the right steps and you can be putting yourself out there and you can have a great resume and you can be networking and you can still get rejections. So it's not something that I want people to take personally. Just like with LinkedIn, if people don't respond to you, it's not about you. It's that they're not looking at their LinkedIn, right? It's not personal. So trying to do our best to remember that and to remove that personal hurt from it and just accept that there's a lot of people applying, there's a lot of great candidates, and that you will get there. And like I said, it only takes one yes.
For sure. I love that saying, it only takes one yes, and persevering and and being motivated throughout this whole journey. That's what matters, because let's say if you get rejected once, it's fine. Keep applying, keep persevering, keep pushing through, because at the end of the day,
Mhm.
it only takes one yes, as you mentioned. So thank you for sharing that. You mentioned that it's really hard for students to balance their, academic responsibilities with their career planning activities, and it's so time consuming. So what are some strategies, or how can students effectively balance their academic life plus their career life as well?
It is difficult to balance, and especially within university, we typically see really high peaks at the beginning of the semesters, right? So we know that it's going to be concentrated. Um, Honestly, what I recommend to most of my students is to be consistent with it. Again, even if those are small steps. So every week, block 5 minutes in your calendar every Friday. That's the time that you send out your messages on LinkedIn, right? Or you block 30 minutes and that's where you send out 1 or 2 applications, right? Doing that every week is much more manageable than panicking one day of the month and realizing, oh, I have to apply to 15 things today. They're all due, right? So breaking out small periods of time, like small chunks, but on a sort of weekly basis is much more effective than trying to smush everything into one day, or to try to do every event that happens in September, right? So really, I encourage everyone to take a look and prioritize, right? Okay, which is my dream job? Okay, that's the one that I need to make sure I get done. Everything else, it's nice if I get it in, but if not, at least I've got that one, right? So taking that time to prioritize, you can't do it all, right? That's just life. But like I said, breaking chunks of time, small chunks of time, and being consistent with it is going to yield better results in the long run than being really active with career and job search in September and then forgetting about it the rest of the year. The students that I have worked with that have seen the most success are those that are dedicating time and effort to it all year long.
Hmm. Makes sense. And so, now wrapping up this conversation, what is one final piece of advice you would give to students who are either in their first year, second year, third year, fourth year, looking for a job, trying to figure out what they want to do, and making sure that they're set up for success? So, what is one final piece of advice that you would give to students?
Can I give 2 pieces of advice?
Sure.
2 pieces of advice. The first one being nothing is forever, right? So, no job, no course, no like relationship. um, Try things, and you don't have to commit to anything, right? You can do an internship for 4 months and say, that wasn't it for me, right? You can get a job when you graduate and a few months in decide this isn't the path, right? Just because you say yes to something doesn't mean that that's what you're stuck in, right? So nothing is forever is the first thing. The second thing is be yourself. Doesn't matter what stage you're at in your career development. Like I said, when you're talking to people, when you're networking, when you're interviewing, when you're actually working after you graduate, be yourself. I see all the time that people put on this sort of facade of what they think employers want, this professional, quiet, serious person. But at the end of the day, what makes you unique is, your personality and your skills and your experience. And if you don't leverage that and be authentic in the beginning, you're going to blend in with everyone else, right? So I encourage people to, like I say, be themselves, be authentic, and that's going to be what gets you hired. Right?
For sure, for sure. Yeah, I think a lot of people, they try to switch their personalities around employers, and they have this fake personality thinking that, oh, if the employers like my personality because I'm faking it, that's what matters, because at the end of the day, I'm just looking for a job. But if you switch that mindset and perspective into thinking that, okay, I'm going to be who I am, and if the employer likes me for who I am as an individual, that's good. If not, I'll move on to the next one. And that's a mindset shift that students need to make, and which is kind of tough as well. It's easier said than done,
Mm-hmm.
but it's really important to do that.
It is definitely easier said than done, but at the end of the day, um, your real self is going to come out at some point. Like even if you get hired with that facade, how long can you maintain that once you start working? 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. So, you are going to find a fit for you if you're, transparent and authentic from the beginning. But don't make assumptions about what employers want or what kind of box you need to fit into, because the reality is that they're looking for all different types of people. So be yourself and find that fit, as opposed to the other way around of trying to fit yourself into what you think they want.
But yeah, I think this was such an insightful and amazing conversation. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat with everyone and providing all these insights and advices. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I could talk about this all day, so I hope that if it can help someone, I am thrilled to be able to share some of the insights.
Perfect. No, I'm pretty sure it's going to help a lot of different students if they're listening to this. And again, thank you so much for being here. And I look forward to seeing you maybe in the next episode, hopefully. But yeah, thank you so much again.
Thank you, Ariane.